Might as well get started, right? It's 8:30 on a Wednesday night, maybe after 8:30 on a Wednesday night. It's the first 8:30 Wednesday night. It's the first Wednesday night at 8:30 in a long time since we've done one of these live shows. Jim will be joining us here in a few minutes as we get started. Late as always, even though we haven't done one of these in like 3 weeks. Of course, still can't be bothered to actually start it right at 8:30, but people are starting to filter in for this week's live Panther-Lair Show right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We'll get all the preliminaries out of the way. Like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And that way you won't miss anything. Any of our morning pit videos, Monday through Friday that we do, or our, what else do we do? Oh, this live show. That way you won't miss it when we go live. It's right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. If you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you turn on notifications, you'll get an alert sent to your phone every time we go live, and then you won't miss anything that we do, any of our live shows, our morning pits, the post-game shows, anything like that. And of course, the place to get the best pit coverage is at Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com for all the pit sports coverage you can possibly handle, and message boards to talk about it with all of your closest pit fan friends. And you may not always agree, but at least the conversation is always there to be had. And so you should check it out. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com is the website. A lot of stuff has happened since our last live show. I think our last live show was probably on December 18th, I want to say. Because we didn't do one on Christmas and we didn't do one on New Year's Day. And here we are on January 8th, restarting it. So since then, there's been there's been one football game. And we could talk about that if anyone actually wants to do that. There's also been 4 basketball games. So plenty to discuss on that front as well. Pitt has landed 11 players from the transfer portal since that date, I think. And so there's been a lot happening. So we got a lot to talk about tonight. When we bring Jim in, we'll jump into the conversation. But of course, you can get in the chat right there and post your comments and questions about what you think about Pitt basketball, the loss to Duke last night, the blowout loss to Duke last night, what you think about the transfer portal, the 11 players Pitt has gotten out of the portal so far, your thoughts on the Game Above Sports Bowl, if you have a thought on that. And maybe you do, but I think we all probably have the same thoughts. I don't think anybody has any good feelings about what happened in Detroit, but if you want to share your thoughts on the Game Above Sports Bowl, you can do that as well. Or like Adam Vinchik here, comment on Pitt Director of Athletics Alan Green giving a contract extension to Dan Fisher, extending him through 2030 is absolutely something they need to do. It should have been a priority for Alan Green. It seems like it was a priority for Alan Green. This is really the first major move he has made since becoming athletic director, or director of athletics, as it were. And so it's something you got to do. You got to extend Dan Fisher, and they got it done. Dan Fisher is going to be the coach at Pitt through 2030. So I agree. Awesome job by Alan Green doing that. So get your comments and questions in over there, and we will get to those. Here we'll bring in Jim and see what Jim's up to. Hi, Jim.
Hi, Chris. How you doing?
Good. It's going well in Johnstown?
Yeah, I just got back to town a couple hours ago. I was in Durham, North Carolina. So, yeah.
Is it any warmer in Durham than it is in Johnstown?
Yeah, it was like 30-ish or in the 30s down in Durham. So it kind of felt a little tropical at times. So
sounds nice. 30s would be, I would invite that. I mean, I don't know what it is in Johnstown, but right now in Pittsburgh, it's 15. I think we had a high of 23 today. So it's been like that. It's been very cold. But anyway, a lot has happened since the last time we hung out. I don't know. Is there anything to say about the Game Above Sports Bowl that hasn't already been said yet?
I'm thinking no. I think we just kind of took it for what it is. And it was a football game played in Detroit the day after Christmas, and they lost. And it was ugly in the moment, and it's still kind of ugly right now. But I think the 11 transfers we're past it. We're looking towards the 2025 season, I guess. So, I mean, if anyone has any comments, I was there. I could tell you all the things that happened in Detroit that day, but
yeah, Jim's got the report from the scene. Have you yet to hear anything approaching valid explanation for why they would not go for it on 4th and goal from the 1?
No.
Either from like the Pitt coaches or just from anyone. Has anyone spoken a word that makes sense of that decision?
No. And I think that was one of the first things I asked Pat after the game, which was like one of the least pleasant press conferences I think we've ever done, because like Brandon and Gavin were sitting right next to him. So it's like, you want to grill him about all these like stupid things he said, but you don't want to do it in front of like his 2 players, his like 2 senior captains who just played their last game. It was an awkward press conference, man.
I got to be honest, like during the answer to that question, I was watching those guys more. I was listening to Narduzzi's words, but I was looking at Brandon George and Gavin Bartholomew, and like, maybe this is just me projecting, but those guys were working really hard to have no reaction whatsoever. Like, how could you not be just destroyed if you're Gavin Bartholomew to be told, like, come off the field? Never mind what you yourself did on 3rd down or 2nd down, quite frankly, to get to the 1. What you did on 3rd down, I'm sure he was feeling pretty, sad about that. But to then be told to come off the field, like, the easiest way I can say it, and I'm certainly not the first to say it, is like, you gave up a chance from the 1 to try the same thing from the 3. Like, but you said, no, we don't want to try that from the 1. We'd prefer to try it from the 3. There's just no justification for it. Like, no rationalization. And the answer was like, I mean, for a guy who has done some impressive word salading over the years, like, he said nothing. It made no sense at all. Is there a possibility, Jim, that he didn't know they were going to go to 2-point conversions in the 3rd overtime?
I wonder that. I was like, maybe he doesn't know the rules. Like, maybe he didn't realize, like, oh, like maybe it's after the 3rd overtime. It's like, no, it starts with the 3rd overtime. So now you're just going to play with the freshman quarterback and have to match Toledo every single time with the 2-point conversion. Yeah.
Well, so I was trying to remember, didn't the rule used to be that at a certain point, you still went from the 25, but you had to go for 2? Like, did that happen at some point? Yeah.
Like, after the 3rd overtime, you had to start just going for 2.
Right. So and that changed somewhat recently?
Like,
right? Like
within the past 3 years. Because I think like Pitt has the longest, that was the longest game in Pitt history and bowl history. But like Penn State had like a really weird game with Minnesota that went like 9 overtimes or something too.
Right.
So like that was within the past 5 years, I think.
Right. So like, but even then, even if that's what you thought you were going to do, they're like, well, after we kick this field goal, then we're going to try from the 20. Why would you want to move back to the 25? You are at the 1. I don't think there would have been a single person who would have, if they tried for the touchdown and failed, I don't think there would be a single person who would have said, why would they go for it there? Like, literally every person in the world of college football said you should be going. Like, people that I never expected to actually be watching that game were like screaming about it on Twitter. Like, national media types were like,
oh yeah,
losing their minds that he didn't go for it. You didn't, obviously you were at the game. You didn't hear the TV broadcast. The play-by-play guy was like apoplectic. Like, he was like, I forget what overtime they were in, like 3rd or 4th overtime. He was like, I mean, I don't even know what we're doing. Pitt should be on the podium right now. This game should have ended a long time ago. We should all be going home. And like, nobody, there's one person who thought they should kick the field goal there. And I really believe it's only unless his offensive coordinator was like, no, man, I want to go for it from the 3. You know, I can't imagine there's another person on this planet who thought they should kick the field goal there. But and that's not why. They threw 2 pick sixes in the game. Like, let's not, yes, that decision could have won the game. It's not entirely why they lost the game, though. They lost the game for a whole variety of factors. We don't need to spend any more time on this game than we did. But I do want to ask you this. How much, I would say, I think we came out of the regular season thinking, okay, one of the things Pitt could probably use in the transfer portal is a veteran quarterback, like somebody to come in and be the backup, particularly after Nate Arnell and to a lesser extent, Ty Diefenbach went into the portal. how much did Julian Dugger's performance in Detroit, if you were thinking that, how much did his performance in Detroit change your opinion in that regard?
I think it did a little bit. I mean, I think you can throw him out there. I think there can be even packages for him next year because he did show a lot. He ran really well, and I thought the offense, like I'm still kind of confused why he didn't play earlier in that game. But yeah, he gave them an element, and he didn't look like deer in the headlights out there. I mean, obviously it's Toledo, it's a bowl game, it's kind of a weird situation, but like he handled himself fine. So I think if like the situation called for it, if he had to go into a game next year, I think they could come up with an offense where they can be effective with them. So, I mean, I would guess there would still be some sort of effort maybe in the spring if there's a quarterback that, hits the transfer portal after his spring practice and it makes sense. Then, yeah, I get it. Like, they probably do need that extra quarterback. But at the same time, like, if they have to go into next season with Julian Dugger as their number 2, I think they can survive.
Yeah, if they could find like an Ivy League guy or something like that who's going to graduate in the spring and you bring him in. But the other thing, I guess the other thing that I couldn't help but think during that game was like, where was all the stuff like the direct snaps to Kenny Johnson or Gavin Bartholomew in the Wildcat, or even like a package for Dugger? Where were some of those things in, what games did they know they didn't have Eli Holstein? Boston College, or what was the other one he missed the entirety of? I'm drawing a Clemson, right? So like, where were those things? You know what I mean? Like, where was that creativity? Just for a little bit here and there. I mean, it worked. Kenny Johnson averaged like 9 yards per carry or something in that bowl game. I mean, obviously Bartholomew. Shoot, they watched that guy from Syracuse do it 2 years ago. They should have some idea of what a big tight end can run in the Wildcat. Like, where were some of those things? Even a direct snap to Desmond Reed. And Nate Yarnell put up a lot of yards in the Clemson game, right? Didn't he have a pretty big, 300 yards or something like that? But they still only scored like 2 or 3 offensive touchdowns. Same thing in the Boston College game. They only scored a few offensive touchdowns. Something to give that offense a spark. Like, where was all that creativity? It's still amazing that like the Gavin Bartholomew Wildcat, they didn't use until the second overtime of that game. Like, presumably they had practiced it, right? And presumably it was in the playbook going into the game. But they went through all of regulation in the first overtime before they're like, you know what we should do? We haven't used it yet. Like, were they just going to go home with that? If they had won in regulation, they just would have taken that home. Like, why would you hold back on stuff like that,
Yeah, I mean, especially in that game, just because like they were playing with a 2 freshman quarterback. Like they needed every ounce of offense they got. And like they actually moved the ball okay, like at times. Like it was a little stagnant in the first quarter. But once Dugger came in, gave them the running element, then they started doing that kind of stuff. Like Kenny Johnson started getting those snaps. And I always thought he was capable of making more plays this season than he did. So I don't know. I mean, it was weird, but like the game is what it is. I mean, it was a loss to Toledo. It was with a skeleton roster, and like, but they still could have won. Everything, college football is so much about perception and like what have you done for me lately? Like, I don't know if a win over Toledo changes the season or anything like that, but like, at least people are like in a better mood for like the past couple weeks. I mean, like you could at least point to like, okay, like we lost a lot of guys. But Desmond Reed played well. We found something in Julian Dugger, and they came out with a win and they didn't lose 6 in a row. They don't have that. And, they earned everything they got at the end of the season.
Yeah. I don't know if a win over Toledo makes anything better, but it doesn't make it worse, which a loss to Toledo makes it worse. We'll have plenty of time. I mean, we've already done plenty of postmortems on this season, and we'll do plenty more throughout the offseason. I'm going to get to a couple questions here. Stephen Keel wants to know, who do you like in the Final Four, the college football playoff? What are your picks here, Jim?
I did a poll like with some friends. I think there's like 22 people got in it. I think I'm in 21st place. So, yeah, okay. I didn't do so. I had Texas winning it all. So,
did you just not? Well, I guess it was chalk in the first round, and then pretty much all seed wise upsets in the second round, right? So, what tripped you up?
I think I had SMU winning the first game. I was doing the ACC solidarity thing. And I don't know. I think things just kind of went wrong, but like none of the 4 national seeds made it in, right? Like it's at this point, it's.
No, yeah, it was all, well, that's what I mean. It was all upsets in the quarterfinals. Seed wise, it was upsets. I mean, I don't think I'm going to call Ohio State beating Oregon a huge upset. I mean, yes, to a certain extent, but I mean, like, I don't think that was a giant upset. I don't think Texas beating Arizona State was a huge upset, or Notre Dame beating Georgia. So what do you previous picks aside, what do you have in the semis here?
I don't know. I think it might be Ohio State, Penn State. Like I guess for once in the college football universe, it's not going to be two Southern schools. Like it's good. Maybe it's going to go to the Big Ten this year. So I don't know. I guess my picks for the next two nights are Ohio State and Penn State.
Ohio State, Penn State, and then Ohio State wins. That seems to be the popular pick, right? Everybody thinks Ohio State's going to roll through this. Is that your call?
I think that would be the funniest outcome because Ohio State fans absolutely hate Ryan Day. So I think it would like I think I'm rooting for him to win a national championship and like still see how they approach him next year. Like, are they still just going to be like angry at him all the time, even with a national title? That's what I want to see. So that's what I'm rooting for.
Our old friend Ryan Donnelly has just turned to straight. He's just turned to straight bravado, but he doesn't talk about Day much anymore. It's just like, we're Ohio State. We kill everyone. We're better than everyone. Nobody else is. He had a funny line. Like somebody was like, he like retweeted himself from like, I don't know, the summer or something. Somebody asked him for a scouting report on Jeremiah Smith, and he was like, "It's like Julio Jones if he was better at football." It's like, I was like, if I had seen that at the time, I would have been like, God, Donnelly, you're such an idiot. What are you doing? But then like, okay, that guy is awesome. So like Donnelly, he might be over the top sometimes, but he's not always wrong. He kind of knows a little bit of ball every now and then. But yeah, I don't. I think I'm going to take Ohio State over Notre Dame. I don't really have a strong feeling either way on who's going to win the Orange Bowl. Kind of leading Notre Dame. I don't know why. I don't know. But yeah, I'm kind of leaning that. But it sort of feels like it doesn't matter who wins that game. I feel like Ohio State is the one. So I think they're gonna take it. Let's see. Adam, another question from Adam Vinchik says, what transfer portal guy are you most looking forward to? I'll tell you, Jim, I think Jaden Moore, who they just got, the defensive end from Oregon, might have the biggest impact. I think they'll get a number of starters out of this group. I think he'll either be in the starting lineup or be a top 4 defensive end. But even if he is or is not starting, I think he might have the biggest impact, the most positive impact. I mean, some of these numbers are just ridiculous. 16 pressures on 73 pass rushes. Like that's kind of silly. And that's the kind of like full season development you like to see out of a redshirt freshman. I think he's going to come in here ready to play and probably play pretty well. So he's probably the guy I would point to. Who do you like out of this 11-man transfer class so far?
Yeah, I would agree with Moore. I like him a lot. I mean, I like kind of like the 2 lottery tickets they took with like the former 4 stars like Andy Jean and Jaden Bonsu. Like, I mean, why not? Like, why not take a chance on 2 guys that were really highly recruited not that long ago? I mean, sometimes the classic just needs to change of scenery. So I think for that, but I like the DB from UC Davis, Kavir Baines. I think he's just going to come in and just be like a solid player for them. Like, maybe not a starter, but like he's going to be on the field a lot. And I think he seems like just a veteran, knows he'll just be able to kind of hop right in and just give them good reps right away.
Yeah, I think he'll fill like a nice little gap. I don't know. I don't know if he'll start or be rotation, but like I think he'll fill a nice little gap with Javon McIntyre and Cruz Brookins and Jesse Anderson. Just one more veteran guy to kind of fit in there until it becomes the Brookins and Anderson show next year. Bonsu is interesting. I kind of think he might end up at linebacker. I think he might play that star linebacker. I think there's a distinct possibility of that happening, which would put him in like a reserve role. He could play boundary safety as well. I think he probably moves well enough to do that. But Baines is interesting. I agree. Another transfer question is from Chris. Says, how hopeful are you with all the transfers to the football team next year? Is there a reason to hope for a good season? So this is a little bit of a different question. It's not just what transfer do you like the most. It's how much do you think these transfers are going to help? And look, the number one thing they had to do in the portal this year, and it's not the only important thing they had to do, but the number one thing they had to do was protect Eli Holstein. They had to find guys to protect Eli Holstein. I don't know, man. They got 2 offensive linemen so far. They got another guy visiting tomorrow who I think they probably have a pretty good chance of landing. I don't even know if 3 is enough. And I'm not totally sure about the guys they're bringing in. So the biggest one is probably Kendall Stanley, the right tackle from Charlotte, right? Has he started multiple years or just this past season?
I think he started 12 games this season as the right tackle for Charlotte, and he might have played one game the year before and got hurt.
Yeah.
But I think it was just one season as a starter, and I don't even know what Charlotte's in. Or the Conference USA, Sun Belt,
something like that. Yeah.
American, one of the three.
Right. So 1 year as a starter. And then Keith, I don't know how to say Gouveia.
I don't either.
I looked up the pronunciation guide, and I talked about this on the Morning Pit the other day. In pronunciation guides, they, break it into syllables phonetically spelled, and the syllable you emphasize has all caps. They didn't put all caps on any of the syllables. So I don't know if it's Gouveia, Gouveia. Like, how do you say a 3-syllable word without emphasizing any of the 3 syllables? Gouveia.
So you have a gripe with the Richmond Sports Information Department for not correcting the issue. Now I haven't learned anything.
The other names in their pronunciation guide have the proper, like, that capitalization on the emphasized syllables. But anyway, here's my thing there. All right, so he started, 24 games over the last 3 years or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
But he's like in and out of the starting lineup. Would he start like 3 games this past season?
Yeah, I talked to him. He told me he had an ankle something.
All right, so an injury. Explain it. Okay, if that's why he's in and out of the lineup. But I mean, it's I don't know, raises because I don't know, just raises some question marks. It's like this is what you did. It had to be the number one priority in this transfer class was getting guys to protect Eli Holstein, and I'm just not sure if they take those 2 guys plus the center who's visiting tomorrow and say, that's it, there we go. We did the job. I'm not so sure that they did. They're coming off a season where one injury on the offensive line basically derailed the whole operation. I mean, just set off a chain reaction that wrecked the season to a 6-game losing streak. I don't know how you come out of the season saying anything other than all the offensive tackles, like all of them. Lots and lots of money gets spent on offensive tackles and quite a bit on pass rushers, but offensive tackles. I don't know how it just doesn't. I mean, like, they're canceling visits for guys.
Yeah.
Maybe they know things I don't. They certainly do know things that I don't. But boy, it just doesn't feel like they have addressed the needs that they need to address, because you have to keep Eli Holstein healthy for next year. And maybe they'll be better. Ryan Baer should be better and all these guys, but I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I think they're relying a lot on development, but like I think the goal, at least in my eyes, should have been like, we need 8 to 9 starting quality players. Like, we need a pool of players that we feel comfortable starting. And right now it doesn't feel like that. It feels like there's a pretty well-defined, okay, like, I kind of have a good idea who's going to be the starting 5 next year. And it's like, I didn't want that right now. I didn't want to know right now who Pitt's 5 starting linemen are going to be, but I kind of feel like I do. And I think they just needed to just beef up the depth. There's so many. I think they have 9 linemen next year with freshman eligibility between red shirts and the true freshmen. So it's a young position. So like, you're kind of relying on like your top 5. Then you're probably not going to get a lot of those 9. Then you have that, like, kind of that middle tier, that Jackson Brown, that Isaiah Montgomery, that Terrence Enos, the guys that rotated at right tackle, and the reason why they need more right tackles. So I don't know. I don't feel great about it, but at the same time, I mean, development's going to have to be part of Pitt's game. Like, it just is. Like, they're going to have to get some of these guys just to get better from year to year. I mean, at a certain point, do you wonder? It's like, they have so much money to spend on a starting offensive line, and it's like kind of already spent. Like, at a certain point, I mean, if you're going to give money to Ryan Baer, BJ Williams, and Lyndon Cooper, you're kind of if you're giving them NIL money, you're expecting them to start, and you're expecting them to produce as a starter level. So that kind of only leaves so much resources for other linemen, I guess.
Yeah. I would break the bank for linemen myself. I would go pretty far into the bank and into the budget to get offensive linemen, because even if like you have Baer and Kendall Stanley as your starting tackles, like, who's behind them? I guess it's Montgomery, Brown, and Enos. And
That was the issue this year.
That's the depth you're going in with. And it's not to say those guys can't get better, but like, I don't know. And now they're bringing a center in who presumably would compete with Lyndon Cooper for that job. I guess Cooper maybe could step back out to guard, but it seemed like they liked him at center. I don't know. I just don't get the plan. It's such a crucial position for the team next year, for the success they're going to have. So much of it depends on Eli Holstein staying upright. And I don't know. So what was even the question? How hopeful am I? Is there a reason to hope for a good season? Sure. I think there is reason to hope for a good season. And this is, not to completely flip-flop on being negative there for a minute, but like, I think Eli Holstein looked really good. Desmond Reed is really good. I think the linebackers obviously look really good. I think there's some really strong positions on this team that can make a lot of plays and help carry this team to a bunch of wins next year. But if you get that one injury again, are you going to be down the same path,
Yeah, I mean, to answer the question, is there reason to be hopeful? I mean, I look at it like this. I mean, Pitt's going into next season with an All-American on each side of the ball. And I can't remember the last time that's happened for Pitt, like where they have two returning All-Americans on each side of the ball. So at the very least, you're anchoring each, your offense with an All-American running back and your defense with an All-American linebacker. In Pitt's place in the world, that's a good start. I mean, that's a really good start. So I do think there's reason for optimism, but they're also counting on a lot of development, some transfers to step up that, you kind of need them to. I mean, there's no other option. You need these guys to perform well. So, I mean, I think a lot of things are kind of hanging by a wire, but if everything goes well, I think they can be a good team.
Yeah. Let's see. Chris says, I like Dugger as the backup next year. And ZC717 followed up and said, Dugger gave me confidence. I definitely think they can use packages for him, and they definitely should do that. I think packages, and I also think by the time you get to next season, he'll have 2 springs and 2 training camps under his belt where he should know the offense well, a little bit better. So I think you can call plays because he's got a special skill set and you can take advantage of it, not necessarily call those plays because he can't run the regular offense. And so, I think he can be a viable backup. My thought on them needing a backup quarterback really did change in that game, to the point where I'm like, they should invest close to $0 in any kind of backup quarterback from the portal who would command any kind of money, like Cole Gonzalez, the Western Carolina kid, like any of these guys. No, you don't, you need that money to be spent at offensive tackle, at defensive end, and so on and so forth down the line. So I think Dugger saved them a lot of money or allowed them to allocate that money differently and probably more productively. So I like that. Now, what about the wide receiver transfers, Jim? Chris says we have to hope the wide receiver transfers we got can make an immediate impact next year. So this is another interesting one, right? Deuce Spann has been in college for 5 years now, right? Played quarterback for a year and a half or 2 years. Hasn't really caught many passes over the last 3 years that he's been playing wide receiver, 3.5 or whatever it's been. He had a 99-yard kick return touchdown, which is impressive for a guy who's 6'4". I guess if you're going to take a lottery ticket, if you're going to take a chance, you take a chance on the 6'4" receiver with that kind of speed, right? So I guess I see that. They don't have a lot of size in the receiver room, and so he adds that. And then Andy Jean looked really good as a high school kid, just didn't really play much in 2 years at Florida. So I don't know, where do you see those guys fitting into the top 6 of Pitt's receivers this year?
I mean, I think they're both in it. I mean, I think you have pretty, 3 pretty well-defined returning guys, and, Lee, depending how he comes off the injury, but also Poppy Williams and Kenny Johnson. So, I mean, I think that's, you're looking at your 5 right there. And I mean, you kind of hope somebody else emerges, whether that's Tyreek Robinson, a true freshman, Zion Fowler, someone like that too. But I mean, that's going to be your 5. So, I mean, I think you're bringing in Spann, thinking okay, you're now Dejon Reynolds. We need a little bit bigger of a wide receiver. We need that 5th option. That's you. I think Andy Jean, there's probably higher expectations. I mean, I think just because he's a former 4-star, he kind of fits the mold of what they're looking for, that 6-foot wide receiver with speed. He's not the bigger guy, kind of fits into what they like to do. So I think the expectations are placed higher on him, but I don't know if that's enough. I mean, I think we know Poppy Williams and CJ Lee can be nice complementary options. I think they're probably better suited in that role than being featured as prominent guys. I think Kenny Johnson's the guy this year you have to turn to and say, all right, we need more from you. And they also need to give him more opportunities as well. But I mean, there's a lot of chance for Andy Jean to come in and play. I mean, I think the opportunity's there. I think the snaps are there for him. It's just a matter of if he takes them.
Yeah, especially since your Lee is out for a while. You know what I mean? Like it's a real question of how long it'll be until he's back. So then you've got, I think Jean and, like you said, maybe Tyreek Robinson or Zion Fowler competing for that third spot behind Raphael Williams and Kenny Johnson. So, but I'm with you, and I think you and I have talked about it all season. Like Kenny Johnson just needs to get the ball. Like the guy, he makes plays. He's probably their best playmaker at receiver. I mean, you got to get the ball to him and give him a chance. I mean, unless you count Desmond Reed, I would say he is their best playmaker at receiver this season. What about, speaking of Reed, it really doesn't seem like they're interested in bringing in a transfer running back. You agree with that? Are you surprised by that?
Not so much. I mean, I think if Pitt's going to be successful, he needs to be on the field a lot. I know everyone worries about his durability, but like, I think he's fine. Like, I think that the size thing kind of got overblown. Like, it's just the position, I think, more than anything. Running back's a demanding position. You take a lot of hits. It doesn't matter if you're 220 pounds or you're 5'8". Like, you're going to miss some snaps. You're going to get banged up. And I think that's just part of it. So he can be an every down back. He showed he could be. He had 1,500 all-purpose yards. I'm not really interested in him being off the field all that much. And I think whenever you do take him off the field, I thought in the past 2 or 3 games, Joel Goff showed some things. Like he made a really awesome move against Toledo. Like he had a little juke on the sideline, like a double move. I think he can play and I think he can help. And they signed 3 high school running backs. Like they have 7 scholarship running backs right now on the books for next year. I mean, that's a lot. Like I don't know if they need 8.
Is it 7? Who is it? Reed, Davis, Goff, and 3 high school guys. Who am I forgetting?
I guess Nabucco is still technically.
Oh yeah, around. Jay, how about him? Good for him. Made it through another portal window. He's still, shout out to him, man. Good for Che.
Big track season coming up.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Well, he's hurt, right?
Did he get hurt?
He didn't finish the year. Like that's like that Boston College game. They were like really close to playing Caleb Williams.
Oh yeah, that's why. That's right. Yeah, he got hurt somewhere along the line. I don't remember that happening, but I do remember him not being available. So, all right, I guess 7 is a lot. I was kind of thinking like, yeah, they probably need another one. I mean, Desmond Reed is awesome and he's one of their best players, of course, but he's missed games every year, for whatever reason. So you probably have to expect that that's going to happen at some point, and probably with most running backs. I like Goff a lot too. We'll see when Derek Davis is able to come back. That was a late season injury that he suffered, and then I guess there's freshmen. But I asked Cade Bell either before the season or mid-season. I was like, is it easier for a freshman, a freshman at running back, they seem to play a lot, and he was like, well, actually in their offense, because they asked the running backs to do so much that it's actually not easier for a freshman to play. So maybe you're not going to count on I think it was Bell that said that. It might've been Lindsey Lamar, but either way, maybe they're not going to count on freshmen, but let's see. Paul Sebastian has a question. 3 of 4 Pitt Saturday home basketball games are 12 or 1. How are times for games decided? And do game times matter? I mean, they're decided by ESPN ultimately, right? I mean, ESPN decides when to put these games on TV. I don't think game times matter. What do you think? Do you think what would draw better? Well, no, this Saturday is not a good example. This Saturday, it's a good thing it's at noon, because if you put this game at night, it'd be going against the Steelers playoff game. And that's nobody wins in that scenario. Or at least Pitt doesn't win in that scenario in terms of viewership and attendance. On a non-Steeler playoff day, what do you think draws a bigger crowd? Try to be independent of the opponent. What do you think draws a bigger crowd? A noon start or a 6:30, 7 o'clock start?
I think on a Saturday, a weekend. I'm just trying to think of like what's the best for the Oakland Zoo. And I know a lot of people say, "Oh, it's early; they won't get out of bed." I'm like, no, I think they will. I don't think college kids like giving up their Saturday nights. Like, I don't think like they want to spend all day waiting to go to the basketball game.
Yeah.
At that point, they're doing whatever they're doing on Saturday night. So I honestly think noon is better. And I'm obviously you and I like noon games because we get out of there sooner. But like, I honestly think like, okay, like you roll out of bed, you walk up to the Pete, like you're in the Oakland Zoo, you jump around, then you have the rest of your Saturday. I think that's what kids would prefer. And I think that would draw better. Just with, basketball is so a lot dependent on winter weather. Like, some people don't want to drive in for the games on a cold night, but they might be more inclined to do it on a Saturday morning. So I don't know. I think the Saturday noon games are fine. But I'm a little biased, because I like them more.
I could see students being like getting kind of like fired up to like wake up early and oh, we're such troopers, and as opposed to like, oh, it's like 2:00 in the afternoon, I better head up to the Pete now to get in line or something like that. Although I wonder how early they have to get in line for these games. This one, they should have a good crowd for this, right? I mean, I know they're coming off a bad loss, but they're playing a big time opponent, a good team, a team that, should be a real challenge. One of the better teams in the ACC. Another kind of measuring stick game, maybe even more of a measuring stick game than the Duke game was. There should be a pretty good crowd. I don't know if they're going to get 12,508 or whatever their sellouts are, but I would expect a big crowd, wouldn't you?
I would think the next 2 Saturdays, and I think the football team's expecting that too, because they're hosting junior days.
Yeah, right.
You don't bring those guys on campus for a lame crowd. So I don't know. I think Louisville, it's national TV. I think it's ESPN or ESPN2. I think Clemson's another big noon game the following weekend. I think they'll do pretty well. And the past 2 years, I think, winning helps a lot, but the crowds have been better. Pitt has a 15-game home winning streak. So there's something to that, I think. So I don't know. I'd expect people to be there.
Yeah. Montana Marie says, what am I missing about the posterizing dunk that Cooper Flagg had over Guillermo Diaz-Graham last night? Shots of everyone looking flabbergasted. This just in, a 6'9" guy can dunk. He didn't clear Guillermo's head or something. Here's what, I mean, I can't say people are missing because it's been mentioned a lot. Dude double dribbled.
He did.
He double dribbled. He very, very clearly double dribbled. He got the steal. He dribbled a couple of times. He touched both hands to the ball and dribbled again. Like when we play our youth rec league games, our 5th and 6th grade rec league basketball games, they call the 5th graders for that because they want them to learn how to ball. Like he was a double dribble, like as clear as day. Now that said, it was a pretty awesome dunk. Like, I mean, like when you, yeah, I know he's 6'9" and all that stuff. He didn't clear Guillermo's head, but he went face to face. I feel like their noses were touching and just slammed it home for a dunk. I mean, it was, if Pitt had done that, if somebody at Pitt had done that, people would still be screaming about it and loving it. I mean, it was an awesome play. Like, there's no doubt about it. It was pretty impressive the next dunk he had on like their next possession when he just dribbled around Guillermo and went straight to the basket for the two-handed dunk. But Cooper Flagg is awesome. We knew that going in. He lived up to the billing. What were your main takeaways from that game last night, Jim?
Main takeaways were, Duke's just a better team. There's no denying that, and it's really hard to win on their home court. So they needed to almost play the perfect game. Like they needed to hit shots early. There was times they competed well defensively. I think there was a stretch Duke missed like 10 shots in a row and maybe even a second stretch like that. Like they competed their ass off defensively, but at a certain point you got to score, and they didn't do that. I thought the biggest stat for me is Duke had 14 turnovers and Pitt had 10 points off of 14 Duke turnovers. There were so many times they got into transition and just fumbled the opportunity. And if Duke's switching everything in the half court, if they are making your life miserable in the half court, you better finish in transition. They didn't do that. So it was a perfect storm. But like the 29 points didn't really reflect how the game played out to me. I mean, it just like it snowballed in the final 6 minutes. But I mean, they got it down to 11. They were competing. Like they started getting stops. Like Brandon Cummings had those 2 tough finishes. It's like, okay, like I don't know if they're going to win, but like they didn't quit, but then they did. And like, I don't think they quit. Like everyone's always like, oh, they lost the team. He quit. Like, I don't think it was that. I mean, I think Duke just went up a notch and they kept missing shots. And by the end of it, it was an 18-0 run.
Yeah. And right after Cummings hit those 2 transition layups, John Shire called a timeout. It was the strangest thing. Like a coach saw the opponent gaining momentum, making a couple back-to-back shots and kind of taking some of the momentum in the game and called a timeout to put an end. You don't see coaches do that a lot, Jim. That's a bit of a rarity. I don't know what Jeff Capel's aversion is to calling timeouts. Like, it would be interesting to go back and see how many games, like what his total like timeout count is at the end of games over the years. Because I feel like he just doesn't call many timeouts. I think he called 2 last night. There was one where actually Duke was on a run. Duke, I wrote this down. Duke was on a, there's my sheet. When Duke went on a 10-0 run in the first half, Capel called a timeout there. And then he called a timeout. Jalen Lowe hit a 3 in the second half and cut the lead to 14. And around like the 10-minute mark, somewhere around there. And Capel called a timeout right after that basket. And then that was when they went on the run to cut the lead eventually to 11. But those are the only 2 timeouts he called in the game. Given how Duke was going on runs, I don't know why he's so averse to that. You know, and we've never really asked him about it. I don't know if he's ever really talked about it. He would probably say he likes to just let the players kind of work their way out of it. He doesn't want to like overcoach or something. I don't know, but have you noticed that? And I know people on the board talk about it a lot, but I mean, do you have a thought? Do you have a theory on Jeff Capel hating to call timeouts?
I really don't. I mean, I think he does trust his guys, and like the past couple of years, he's had good guards, and usually, like if you trust your point guard, you're like, okay, like you get us out of it, like get us in the set and get everyone calmed down. And I think at times last night, like Jalen was the guy that needed calm down. I think he needed settled down. I think he needed to sit for a little bit of time. So yeah, you probably should have called a few timeouts, but like the other thing with Duke runs is, so they lost by 29. So there was that quick little 10-0 run and an 18-0 run to end the game. So I'm not saying Pitt played equal with them, but like score-wise, they did the rest of the game. There was like 8 really bad minutes and 32 minutes where they were at least kind of hanging around. That's kind of how I viewed the game. But like when those 8 minutes were happening, there's probably times to call a timeout.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting way to look at it. I hadn't really thought about it that way. You know, I think a lot of the focus, my focus, and I think Capel even talked about it after the game, was Jalen Lowe and Ishmael Leggett just insisting on driving to the basket and letting Duke collapse on them and trying to drive into it, and not kicking the ball out. Like, and I kind of feel like that was maybe the biggest problem with Pitt's offense. I think officially they were, you know, those 2 attempted 11 layups, which doesn't seem like that many for 2 guys, but it just felt like every possession, one of them was just driving into the lane, 4 Duke guys collapse on them. They don't get a basket, and Duke gets the ball going the other way, while there's a bunch of guys standing on the perimeter who could have taken a pass and had a good look at a shot. Is it as simple as that to you, Jim?
Yeah, I mean, I thought at halftime they only attempted 6 threes. I thought they needed to shoot the ball more. I think you need, whenever the team's that big, and like, it's not that Pitt's small. Like Pitt starts a really tall lineup too. Like they're not small out there, but like the fact that Duke was just able to switch everything, it stunted everything. The 7-2 guy, when Jalen caught the ball and that guy was on him, he couldn't get around him. Like, and he normally can. And I think that frustrated Pitt. Like those guys, those 2 guards can get around anyone. There was just this freakish 5-star freshman that's 7'2" that, like, even if you try to get around him, then you're running into the 6'9" guy that's also a 5-star. So it's like there was no room to operate. Like I was sitting courtside. It's like Duke's the last place in the ACC where you're like right on top of the floor. I don't know if you missed that about the Pete or not. Our seat at the Pete kind of stunk, but but we were like in the Oakland Zoo. But like,
we were there,
you could feel it. Like you could just tell they had nowhere to go. And like I'm like right there, and I'm like, man, it just looks tight. Like it looks like they're playing on like a small, like single A high school basketball court, and Pitt just has nowhere to go. But I think if they were to play them again, it would obviously be on a neutral court. It would be sometime in March. I think the biggest thing in that game is just Pitt needs to be decisive. It's like, all right, if Jalen's going to drive, like the 3-point shooters need to be ready to shoot. I thought there was a lot of times guys would catch on the wing and fumble it around. It's like, no, like catch the ball, be ready to shoot. Like I think the Twins need to be ready to go. I think Zach Austin needs to be ready to shoot. I think Damian Dunn will be kind of more up to speed, you know, later in the year. And I think Brandon Cummings needs a few more minutes. I mean, I think he's the really only true pure 3-point shooter on that team. So I think he needs more looks.
Of the guys getting minutes.
Yes.
Because, I mean, there's still Amsal, who I believe he was there, right? He was in the building, was he not? Amsal was in the building. Papa Conti was in the building, right? Am I wrong about it? Just, I know I didn't see him on the court, but they were there, weren't they?
Everyone was there. That was the first time they had the full roster available.
Man, could Papa Conte, could he fit? Somebody asked about this. Let me see if I can find the question here. Wait, I thought so. Oh, here, ZC717 says, I saw this on a comment someone left in the morning Pitt, and I agree. Why does Pitt not use Papa Amadou Conti more? The guy has a 7'4 wingspan. He's 6'10". I think he, along with Corin, should get more minutes. Could he have, like, when you lose a game by 29, you give up an 18-0 run to close the game. Like, there's no one factor you can point to and say, could that have changed the game? But do you think Papa Amadou Conti could have had a positive impact on what happened last night?
I don't know if that was the game for him. I don't know what he would have brought that they didn't already have on the floor, because they need more offense. And with respect to him, he's not bringing a lot of offense. Like, if Pitt's going to run the high ball screen and, they're going to switch anyway, like, at least Cam Corin could, post up Tyrese Proctor. Like, there was a chance of that happening. Like, I don't know how much good would have happened with Conte on the floor in that same scenario. Like, Duke's still going to switch the high ball screen. They're probably not going to respect him offensively. And Jalen Lowe's probably not going to pass them the ball, because nothing's probably going to good happen if he catches the ball.
I thought Cam Corin played well. I thought
he was the only one.
Good game. Yeah. Like, and I think he's like strung a few together now, maybe like 3 in a row of playing pretty well, where he was kind of struggling in December. He didn't have a great month of December, at least like, mid-December to the end of December. But I feel like he's looking pretty positive. Don't you? I mean, I think he's looking pretty good.
I think so too. And I think there was a stretch about 4 or 5 games in November, that Mississippi State game, the Virginia Tech game. I think the biggest issue with him is he just wasn't rebounding. And I don't know if he has a better understanding of what Pitt is asking him to do. It's like, no, dude, like, we need you to rebound like crazy. Like, we're playing a lot of guys that aren't great rebounders, or we're playing, 2 6'3" guards. Like, you're out there to, rebound and also finish better than the guy you replaced. Like, and I think he got the scoring part of it. Like, I think he understood that. It's like, but I think his motor's better. I think he's more conditioned. I think he's just better suited to play and understand his role. So I think that's a big thing for them going forward. Just to have that option to dump something inside, and, when everything else is not working, you can maybe get some, back to the basket points from your big. That just hasn't really been an option the past 2 years. So I think it unlocks some things for him, at least.
Yeah, I liked it. I still think it's remarkable, like, the way that Lowe and Leggett play, as physical as they are, as much contact as they draw, they drive into contact, and together they attempted 1 free throw last night, and it wasn't even a shooting foul. It was a 1-and-1 away from the ball at the other end of the court. Like, I know it's Cameron, I know it's Duke, and I think actually they had a decent officiating crew last night, but come on. Duke defended really well. Duke's defense is awesome. They're really good. But, like, those two guys, as much as they drove, and the way they drive and the way they initiate contact, and not 1 shooting foul, I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, and they had them at halftime. They had 3 Duke starters with 2 fouls at halftime. Like, they were doing it they weren't getting to the line, but they were drawing fouls at least. Like, Cooper Flagg picked up his 3rd early in the second half. And at the time, it felt like a big moment, but they just never did anything on top of that. So I don't know if it was, some bad calls, bad luck. But there was the same thing in the Mississippi State game. Like, they didn't draw any fouls in that game either. And it's like, they kind of need to. Like, whenever you have 2 guards that like to go downhill, part of the deal is, like, they both need to shoot like 6 or more foul shots in a game.
Yeah. I mean, that's what they're doing. Like, and in a situation like last night, where they don't have a great chance of scoring against those guys, they're trying to draw contact. They're trying to get to the free throw lines. Trey McGowan's against Florida State his freshman year, and Louisville his freshman year, where he shot like 30 free throws or something like that. I mean, or scored 30 points because he shot like 19 free throws. I mean, it's just drive in there with reckless abandon, no regard for your body, and just crash into guys and get to the foul line. And that's what they were trying to do last night. I will say, because we brought up the Mississippi State game a couple of times, Pitt was more competitive last night than they were against Mississippi State. Like, there was no point in the Mississippi State game where I thought Pitt was competitive at all. I mean, it was a blowout start to finish. There was nothing on either end of the court that Pitt was able to do offensively or defensively. Whereas last night, there were times where I was like, oh, they're playing pretty good defense. Or, oh, look, they're getting a little bit of something going on offense. They only scored consecutive points like 3 times in the whole game. But, oh, they're getting a little bit of something going. Mississippi State was not competitive at all. Even if this ended up being, what was the final in Mississippi State? How much did they lose by?
33, I think.
Okay, so it was a bigger blowout anyway. So, but would you agree? I mean, they were more competitive against Duke than they were against Mississippi State, right?
Yeah, I mean, like that. Like I said, that there was a stretch where I think Duke was like 1 of 12, like somewhere in the middle of the first half, like. And there was, they got it down to 11 points with 8 minutes to go. I mean, like, that was not even a possibility against Mississippi State. Like, they were already, like, losing by, like, 30 plus. Like, I think they had to, like, cut it down to make it 33. Like, it was that bad. So, like, they were not the same games. But, like, at the same time, it did show, like, Duke is the best team in the ACC. Like, they very much are. Like, it's not that close either. Like, there's a reason they're the only ranked team. They might be number 1 by next week with Tennessee losing, and they already have a win over Auburn. So, like, Duke could jump up to number 1. And I mean, after seeing it live, like, I get it. Like, they're really good. Like, their smallest starter 6'6". Like, that's like an NBA team out there. I mean, like, Cooper Flagg's like no doubt the number 1 pick. After seeing him live, like watching him, I'm like, oh yeah, like I get it. Like I see why he's a phenom. So yeah, I mean, there's a huge gap there, but I think Pitt can take moments from that game if they were to meet again in March, like in the ACC tournament or whatever. And I think on a neutral floor, they might have a better chance. But at the same time, like, you have to play really well to beat Duke. Like, you have to hit your shots. Those little runners that those guards take, they need to start falling. They need to hit a few more threes. Like, you have to play the perfect game. And, ideally, if you're Pitt, you're playing really good basketball in March. And, maybe you get that chance.
Yep. So Saturday, Louisville, noon, Peterson Event Center. Battle for second place. Is that what this is?
I mean, it's close. I mean, I think you look at the ACC, it's Pitt, Louisville, Clemson, even though Louisville just beat Clemson, but like Clemson's still tough. They the Pitt never plays well against them. So, that's going to be a game. But yeah, I mean, if you look at Pitt's remaining 16 games, I mean, you would expect Pitt to win most of them, but this is one of the toss-ups for sure.
Do they go to? Yeah, they go to Louisville on March 1st. I don't know. Like, did last night change anything for what you think about this team or how you see this team?
No, because I think Duke would do that to Louisville too. Or like they already did beat Louisville by 15 points. Like they already, like they're going to beat every team in the league by double digits more often than not. So like, yeah, it snowballed. It looks worse than it did, but like they competed for a while, but like Duke is different than the rest of the other 19 teams or 16 teams, whatever it is. Like it's just a totally different animal. So what Duke did to Pitt is what Pitt can do to a lot of teams in the ACC, and they're going to do to a lot of teams in the ACC, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I know we haven't made our picks yet for Saturday, but if I don't know, what is there a panic meter if they lose that game? Like, do you start? Obviously, there's going to be the caveats in the context of how they lose and what happens, and it could be a buzzer beater where Lowe and Leggett score 20 points each, and so you start and they just happen to lose. It's just a tough game, college basketball. But like generally speaking, they lose that game. They lose 2 in a row. They drop to 12-4, the second ACC loss. Does it start getting a little bit panicky around these parts?
Around these parts, yeah. I mean, that's like losses. That's what we do. We panic after losses. Yep. But I don't think there needs to be. I mean, I don't think there should be yet. Like, there's 16 games left. They're not going to win all 16 of them, but they're going to win at least 10 of them, probably more. So, like, there's going to be that wiggle room where, one of the Carolina games, probably the Louisville game, Clemson, maybe a couple others that are going to be tricky for them. And they're not going to win them all, but I like their chances at home. I mean, they've won 15 in a row at home. Like, they're doing something right there. Like, there's a comfort level there. I do think it's going to be a good crowd. So I don't know if I'm giving my pick away just yet, but like I do have a somewhat of a confidence level for Pitt. I think they're a little bit deeper, and I think Jalen Lowe is going to be the best player on the floor.
Tyler Hawk says, I rarely feel like Pitt's offensive sets, quote, create shots. No set plays to an open shooter or slashing cutter, reliance on everyone to create their own shot. Fair, or am I missing something? I feel like this is a pretty common criticism, and it has been, of Jeff Capel and how he coaches over the past few years since he got to Pitt. We do have our guy Steven Gertz do breakdowns after games where he breaks down the film and he talks about the plays that Pitt's running. Because I'm the same way. I'm a layman. I'm an idiot. I'm sitting out there and I'm like, it doesn't look like they're doing anything at all. It doesn't look like there's any method to this. It's just kind of haphazard, playground ball, positionless, all this stuff just floating around until somebody takes a shot. But Steve will break it down and point out all the things that they do. Do you get that same feeling too, Jim? Do you think there's merit to what Tyler is saying and what a lot of fans say and what I sometimes think when I watch that, like, boy, it just kind of looks like they're letting the guard just sort of dribble for 20 seconds and then drive and see if he gets a basket out of it?
I mean, I think a lot of the stuff they run, there's just options off of everything they do. Like there was a time last night, like Jalen was like cutting to the middle and like all of a sudden like Zach Austin's breaking for an oop and Brandon Cummings is spilling into the corner and like Ish Leggett's coming around and like he had like 4 different options. He picked the wrong one. He threw it to Leggett and it went back court or something like that. But like within their sets, there are things going on. And there was another one. They kind of tried to do like a back screen to like set Cam Corrin up for like a post up. And I think Guillermo just threw it directly out of bounds. So like I agree in the sense they don't have a lot of quick hitters. Like they don't have like, I need a basket right here. Like, but there's stuff going on their sets that they're doing things. It's just a lot of it is free will to the point guard. But like, I thought last year, like they did a lot of things where it's like, all right, let's just get Blake a 3. And they did. And they just don't have that 3-point threat right there where you can run that quick hitter, but they do stuff.
Would Blake, they wouldn't have won with Blake last night, right?
I mean, he's a streaky shooter. I mean, like if he goes 7-7, they win. But like there was games last year where he totally disappeared. So, I mean, they just last night felt like they just needed more 3-point threats. Obviously, Blake Hinson's a great one, but that was just a really good Duke team too. Yeah, I think that's what it is.
That's what it ultimately comes down to. Next week, Pitt is at Florida State on Wednesday night, actually, for 9:00 game. So I think we'll start at 8. We'll do a little pregame show. It's always fun. We did that last year, that one time. That was a good time. Maybe we'll get Jerry to hang out with us too. See if Jerry wants to come, as a guest on the show. That was fun when we did that a year ago. We can get Jerry in. So maybe we'll do that. But we'll definitely start at 8:00 next week. So we have an hour-long show leading into Pitt at Florida State. Of course, Louisville this weekend and then Clemson next weekend. So big little run of games here, big opportunity, but every ACC game is going to be an opportunity for Pitt. All right. Fred Benson's final comment. We'll give him the final word. Last night's loss at Duke was just as fun as the Steelers' current losing streak. City of Champions is now a joke in 2024-25. How about Pittsburgh football, Pitt football and Steelers since Halloween? Did you see when I tweeted this out, Jim?
Yeah, not a lot of wins lately.
4 wins, 11 losses for Pitt football and Pittsburgh Steelers since Halloween. 4 wins, 11 losses. Obviously, all 4 wins are for the Steelers, but been a lot of losing football since Halloween in basically the last 2 months and a week. So,
well, speaking of Pittsburgh football, the city game's back.
Sure is, and that wraps up our show. Jim, I mean.
You don't think Pitt wants revenge from the 1939 game? Are you
have
kidding?
Something to say? I know. Wait, do you think? Okay, now that you brought up revenge, now I got to ask you. Like, do you think anybody on that Duke roster was thinking about Blake Hinson standing on the scorer's table when they went into that game last night?
No, the students like I sit like right. Like the camera crazies are right behind me. Like they were talking trash the whole game. Like they remember, but like what is Cooper Flagg? He doesn't even know who Blake Hinson is.
That's the thing. Like Flagg, Caduple, Malushin, like none of these guys were on the team. Like they weren't there. Like you could show them a video of like, you don't want this disrespect again. But like I've seen a bunch of people say that like Duke had to get Pitt back for that. Blake's not on the team. The guys who did all the damage last night were not on the team. No, they just wanted to win. and they piled it on. Like, Tyrese Proctor was still shooting threes late in the game, not because he was mad about Blake Hinson standing on the scorer's table a year ago, because he had open shots from three. And look, in today's basketball, you got to run up the score. And if you can run up the score against a conference opponent, you do it even more. Like you get it up there and blow them out as much as you can. So yeah, I didn't really think too much of that. I have nothing to say about Pitt-Duke. It's an FCS game. It's cool that it's a local team. I don't think it's going to move the needle much in terms of attendance or interest. It became a minor talking point yesterday. There was some good PR out of it. Pitt put out a graphic on social media about it, so that means it's a big deal, clearly. And they wouldn't do that if they were playing Maine or something. But like, Duquesne draws like 1,200 people to its games, so I don't know that you're really going to get some big attendance boost out of it. It's just, sure, it's cool. You're playing a local team. It's an FCS game.
There was like some like college football like blogger or something. He has like a YouTube channel, and he went to all the stadiums, like all the FCS stadiums like around Pittsburgh, and he was just like walking around Duquesne, and he was like, I didn't realize this is the smallest FCS team or stadium in the country, but he was just like walking around. He's like, so their games are just on campus, like you could just walk right into them. Like he walked up into the press box, tried to open the door. Like he was just like, this is the most relaxed thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Then he did the same thing at Robert Morris. He even stopped at St. Francis, PA. Like he's like, these places are all like high school stadiums. I'm like, yeah, they are.
That's just about right. That's yeah, not. I remember like way back when like LaShawn McCoy was playing at Milford Academy. For a couple of years there, Milford Academy would come play against the Robert Morris JV team on like a random Monday night in the fall, or not even a night. It was like Monday at like 3:00 in the afternoon. So I would drive out to Moon Township and watch, because like they had LaShawn McCoy and they had Kenyon Mosley Smith and Andre Wright and Todd Thomas and all these guys that were going to Pitt. And I remember like walking into the Robert Morris Stadium and just being like, this is about the equivalent of Gateway. Like Gateway Stadium is just as nice, maybe even a little bit nicer. And so it's like, yeah, but this is FCS football. So, but yeah, I don't have any thoughts on the city game coming back. It's the only thing it does is that's takes up one more date in August, and we know they won't open with an ACC opponent. We're not going to have that the FCS opponent at the end of September like it was last year in 20 they do that. No, 22 they opened against West Virginia.
Even this year, Youngstown was like the 4th or 5th game, wasn't
it? That's what I mean. Yeah, like they're not going to do it like they did in 2024 or 2021. I think 2021 they had an FCS game at the end of September. I kind of like it that way, but instead you'll just get this warm-up game. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I don't have anything to say about it, but we talked about it for a little bit.
Yeah, we acknowledged it.
I got to reminisce about going to Robert Morris Football Stadium to watch their JV team play against. I would go get dinner at the Ground Round, or like a late lunch at the Ground Round, and then head over to.
I wonder if that's
Robert
still there.
Morris. Oh, it's not.
Okay.
I don't think it is. I think the last time I went out to the what's their arena called? The UPMC Event Center.
Something like that, right?
Yeah.
They get concerts out there. Were you out there for a show?
Yeah, I went out there for that and parked in the grocery store parking lot across the street because it was easier to get into. And I think the Ground Round was like right near that parking lot. I think the building's still there, but the Ground Round is not open anymore. So anyway, I think we can probably end on that note. Thanks to everybody who tuned in tonight, all the comments and questions. It was fun. We enjoyed the conversation. It's always good to get back at it. Don't forget, we'll be live next week at 8:00, leading into the Florida State game at 9 p.m. on Wednesday. And of course, if you like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, turn on your notifications. We'll send you a little alert when we go live so you won't miss anything that we do here. So thanks for everybody for tuning in. Jim, thanks for your time tonight. Make sure you guys check out Panther-Lair.com. We'll be back tomorrow with the Morning Pit. A lot of talk about transfers and all kinds of things like that right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.